a year from now, a year from this past weekend, what will be good about District Assembly for us is next year, Ryan is going to be ordained. So don't clap too much. He's got to finish 3 classes between now and then. And he's got to be interviewed. He's got to be interviewed. But he knows the chairman of the committee, so that might help a little bit. So probably next year we might have, a day where we're going to just say, hey, let's have as many as want to or possible come down and support Ryan. It'll be on a Saturday in early April next year. Dr. David Busick will be the general superintendent, and he's a really, really good speaker. And Ryan is just overjoyed that that will be the general superintendent that ordains him. I still remember the one that ordained me in Wichita, Kansas in August of 1990. It was Dr. Eugene Stowe. That doesn't mean anything to most people, but if you know Stowe, I'll do my best. You really feel ordained was him. Do the work of an evangelist, be prepared. And he's got that really deep, booming voice. It was like God himself was ordaining. But that'll be a really good week. We've been looking ahead, those places in the Old Testament that seem to look ahead at something. And today we're in a book called Zechariah. And this is an interesting, we're going to do a little advanced scripture this morning. And what I mean by that is there are times we just pick up a Bible as if it's kind of dropped to us out of a cloud and expect us to provide easy answers, pat answers. And this is not one of those texts where that happens. This is a fascinating chapter. I'm in Zechariah chapter 9, starting at verse 9. And this is a perfect chapter to read heading into Palm Sunday next week. Rejoice, O daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken, and he will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Now that seems pretty plain, but let me just move a couple verses down. And I'm starting in verse 14, same chapter, Zechariah chapter 9. Then the Lord will appear over them. His arrows will flash like lightning. And the Lord will sound a trumpet, and he will march in the storms of the south. And the Lord Almighty will shield them. They will destroy and overcome with sling stones. And the Lord their God will save them on that day as the flock of his people. I have a question. See, this is a fascinating chapter. You have 2 different pictures. The first one is the Messiah coming in riding on a donkey, and just 6-7 days from now, we'll be celebrating that very vision of Jesus coming into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. But what's interesting is just a couple verses later, same author, same chapter, same section. You have God sweeping in with the armies of the south. Arrows flashing like lightning, destroying and winning the battle. Here's my question. Well, which one is it? You can't have it both ways. One of my favorite phrases that I use sometimes when I talk to people or I see people debating issues, the thing that I like to say is, hang on a minute, pick a lane. I don't care which lane you pick, but you need to pick a lane and stay in that lane. And it seems to me, at least on the surface, that Zechariah is definitely occupying multiple lanes at once. And my question is, which one is it? Is it the army guy sweeping in? Or is it the peaceful guy on the back of a donkey? I don't think any army person, even in the first century, trotted into battle on the back of a donkey. A chariot, yes. Maybe even horseback, yes. Or marching in columns, but just ambling in on the back of a donkey. Our mind goes back back to one of our vacations. I think it might have been Tennessee. One of the things we used to try to do on a vacation because of our daughter is we always tried to have a family horseback riding thing. And our son, who was never really afraid of anything, did not like horses very much. And we have pictures of our Sarah at 9 years old marching out in the middle of a pasture with horses everywhere with a handful of carrots. And she would go out and she would say, "No, not your turn." Boom, and do this one. And just absolutely no fear. And so here we had this one horseback riding trip, and there was one pretty good sized horse, and then there was a mule. And the guide says to Adam, "You can have the horse," and looked at our daughter and said, "You can have the mule." And my wife says, "Whoa, stop, reverse that." And gave Sarah the horse and gave Adam the mule, just kind of ambling along. Adam was plenty happy with that arrangement. When Jesus on Palm Sunday got onto the donkey and rode into Jerusalem, this might as well have been a campaign commercial. This wasn't accidental. He is announcing to everybody there, look who's riding in the town, and by the way, I'm the Messiah. They knew the prophecies. They knew what that meant. Jesus knew Zechariah 9, and so did probably most of the people that he rode into Jerusalem that were looking at him. He was announcing, I'm telling you something pretty big about myself. I am the Messiah. And by the way, my agenda is peace. It was just a few days earlier in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that Jesus had come in and right around this time and overturned the money changers' tables, which probably picked up the interest of Judas and maybe even Peter a little bit, because they knew the prophecy as well. And I'm telling you, I think they like the ones 5 verses later. This is the start of the campaign. This is the start of the battle. We're going to overturn everything. We're going to revolutionize everything. And we're going to start to pick off these Roman soldiers. By the way, it's not very long. You don't have to wait very long in ancient Palestine for some new guy to come down the road proclaiming that he's the Messiah. And when these other people did it, invariably, it always started with a little armed rebellion. They would end up wiping out a little detachment, a little battalion of Roman soldiers. They never lasted very long, because when you did that, the bigger battalion came down the road and wiped you out. 5 verses later is a militaristic description. The Messiah will sweep. The one with overwhelming arrows. The one where the defeat of the enemy will be total. Sorry, this is a Messiah that kicks butt and takes names. And they were ready for him. I'm sure there are more than a few people. We are putting Rome on notice. And I think his own disciples are part of that group. So here we have these two visions. We have overwhelming military force and peace back to back. And my question is, which one is it? And what is going on? Now, see, here's where we think the Bible's very simplistic. You hear this all the time. I can't believe they didn't know who Jesus was. The prophecies are just plain as can be. Well, no. This is one of those places. See, in a prophet's mind, the Messiah is going to come and make everything better. But to make everything better, the first thing you have to do, you have to defeat the enemy. Now, when Zechariah was written, the enemy was Babylon. Interesting, by the time we get to Jesus, the enemy has shifted. There's a new enemy to focus on. Now it's Rome. So here's a prophecy that was written technically with God will defeat Babylon, and now it's already at Jesus' time, the Messiah is going to defeat Rome. Might have been the first clue that perhaps the enemy that Zechariah was referring to was not the big power over there. So first, the Messiah has to defeat everything bad that stands against us. Now, there's always stuff that stands against us. Now, once again, for those of you under the age of 40, we're now battling inflation again. A lot of us remember the early and mid-70s. You don't. Then a whole world of politicians said, I can fix this, and gave us buttons to wear that said, win, whip inflation now. And what they did was they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a law that tells you how much you can charge for a 10-ounce can of soup. And then what they did was they started making 9-ounce cans of soup or 12-ounce cans of soup and charging what they want. Then they had to go back. Oh, now we're going to charge only this much for a 12-ounce can of soup. And then they made 14-ounce cans of soup. You only charge so much for a pound of meat. Well, we'll do 3/4 of a pound of meat. And everybody started to chase everybody's tail for the longest amount of time. You go to the pump. I saw someone post this week, and it said this. It said, who do I call? I was robbed. I was robbed at the gas station. And I was robbed of $90 at the gas station. It was tragic. Who do I call? Well, who did it? Well, pump 4. But see, we're the same way they are. In our view, the enemy's always out there. The enemy's right over there. The enemy is political. Not my party, their party. That must be the enemy. The enemy can be a person. The person who took your promotion. The person who represents the party you don't like. It could be a father-in-law. It could be a friend. It could be someone in the community. And that's my enemy. Pretty soon we get to the point, and we're kind of there as a culture. My enemy is anyone and everyone who disagrees with me right now. I'm thankful that God is here, and God will help me defeat them, because they are the source of everything that's causing me strife. Then God will step in after all the enemies are defeated, and God will make everything better. He will be a man of peace and justice. So if you're a prophet in the 4th century or 5th century or 6th century BC, how on earth do you write that? You write that in ways that you understood. If the enemy is Rome, if the enemy is Babylon, the Messiah has to defeat that enemy. So we're writing in these very terms about arrows and lightning and armies from the south and all this stuff. And then once the enemy's defeated, then he'll be the man of peace. He'll have justice, unlike Babylon, unlike Rome. He'll launch this new kingdom. That's all he's writing. He's writing in the language that he knows about defeat of enemy, and then everything will be better and God will do it better. Here's what the prophet did not see. And they could only see what they kind of could see coming. He saw that the Messiah would defeat the enemy. But what if the enemy that needs defeating is not Babylon and not Rome? What if the enemy that needs defeating is not someone over there? or that thing over there? What if the thing that needs defeating is in here? See, our problem is never over there. Our problem is always in here. See, we live in a world, and I was amazed. We heard a sermon like this at District Assembly. Mine was written before I heard that sermon. Our problem is never over there. Our problem is always here. We live in a world that tells you the exact opposite. The problem is always them. It's the other political party. It's the other country. It's the person that holds a different view. And the solution is in here. The solution is always in here. And if you just be true to what's in here, it'll all get better. We have Disney songs like that. Let it go, let it go. If it's not in here anymore, everything will be better because the solution's always in here. Look, follow your heart. Look within. Look to your heart. But what if this is all wrong? What if the vast majority of my problem is my pride, my anger, my selfishness, my greed? See, many in Jerusalem wanted a Jesus who took care of them. And they knew the prophecies, including this one. But I think they wanted the army leader from the south. They didn't want the man of peace. And I wonder just how much has changed in 2,500 years. We still assume our enemies are those people over there. We still think the answer is political. The exercise of power. If we exercise power differently, then everything will be solved. I have no idea the outcome of the next presidential election in 2024. I think I have a pretty good idea, but I don't know for sure. But I can tell you this with absolute certainty. That night, whoever loses, there's going to be a room full of people crying. My guy lost now. Oh, I got to move to Canada now. And there'll be 800 people saying they're going to move to Canada if their guy doesn't win. And then their guy doesn't win, and they never seem to move. I don't understand that. As if the change of a person in an office is going to radically change your life. And let me say one thing. I'm not denigrating political opinions. It's okay to have them. I have them. I also think there are foundations on which to build a society. I think there are also things that tend to destroy culture. I believe all of that. But I think we need to be very careful if we think that a different party will be the answer to humanity's issue. It never has been and isn't now. Our problem, my problem's them. And I want someone in the office to take care of them. And I wonder how many people saw Jesus. Think about everything that happened in that last week. They'd heard about feeding the 5,000. They'd heard about the lame man walking. They'd heard about maybe the men possessed by demons. Matthew says there were 2 of them that had been healed. And then there was this thing, some saw it, not everybody, something about Lazarus and a guy that had died for 4 days and now he's back to life. Fervor was at a fever pitch. And there were murmurings that this was the Messiah. This was the Messiah. This was the Messiah. And could it be he's one of us? He's from Galilee. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Everything's going to change now. We're going to become more important. And then Jesus did the unthinkable. Instead of gathering troops, he climbed on a donkey and rode toward the cross. No one ever thought that a Messiah would ride toward the cross. The cross is where cursed is anyone who hangs on a tree. That's Deuteronomy 23. See, Jesus is the answer now as he was the answer then. And Jesus reminds us now, as he was reminding the people then, that our problem is typically not the person who's in charge, but the problem is what's in charge inside me. And it lies inside all of us. Often, we live in a world, even a church world, that we come to Christ, we ask Christ to defeat our enemy, and then to help us gain our goal. If I have enough faith, I'll get the job, I'll get the income level, I'll have the things. Jesus is here, help me satisfy these other things. Help me defeat my enemies where I can ultimately be the victor in whatever field, that every expression that I want to be victorious. And here's the thing. Sometimes, well, every time, when we come to Christ, we have to ride to the cross. And it's not more any popular now than it was then. See, we want to ride with the guy sweeping in with the army from the south. But Jesus got up and rode toward the cross. And John, Philip, and Andrew come to Jesus and say, Jesus, there are these Greeks that want to talk to you. Now, we don't know who that is. I like to fill in the gap a little bit. There's some excitement here about these Greeks. I think they might be important. I think they might be wealthy. I think they're probably Gentiles. And I think Philip and Andrew are saying, hey, these are people with some means. These are people with some money. These are people that can make things happen. And they want to talk to you. Think about what we can do. Think about how we can, the big things. Think about the army columns we can fund. And that's when Jesus oddly says, no. I have to go to Jerusalem. And he turns toward the cross. See, today I want to end the service with a time of communion that ends with these words. When Jesus talks to him, he says, do this in remembrance of me. As we do this, we're going to eat and we're going to drink. Do this in remembrance of the one that turned toward the cross. Do this in remembrance of the one who didn't choose to be the victor in battle. Do this, and as we do this, remember that we are asked to pick up our cross from time to time. See, what we've done is you can go to the jewelry store later today. It's literally the last place I ever want to be. And you can find wonderful jewelry of the cross. That's what cross has kind of turned to us. It's a nice gold thing. We wear it. It's nice. It costs money. We look. I'm not putting any of that down. But when Jesus says pick up the cross, he wasn't talking about going to the jewelry store. He was talking about walking down a way of sacrifice. Walking down a way, a different way than all the culture. And in a minute, as we eat and drink, I want us to remember what he did. And I want us to commit to follow as well.